All right. Well, it's great to be with you. I'm David Trowbridge. I'm a historian at the University of Missouri at Kansas City. Graduated from KU. Actually drove all over the eastern part of Nebraska when I was doing my dissertation. One of the great things about those trips was I would always wait until the end of the research day to get a hotel, because about half the time somebody would invite me to stay with them in their home. So wonderful memories of that. So I'm originally from this area. Very happy to be back in the Kansas City area. Taught for 11 years at Marshall University in West Virginia. And it was during that time that I came up with what became Cleo. And I truly thought it was going to be just a class project. A third year of teaching, as often happens, students weren't exactly jumping on top of their chairs and proclaiming, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," at the end of all my lectures. And so I said, what's important in this class is that you learn the skills of the historian, go forth and tell me a story about a place that matters to you. And in that class, we decided to make an app. By the end of the semester, it started to be a little clunky. And the students told me about how they took Mima and Papa to go see historical sites, or they went with friends to go see things. And so at that point, I was utterly trapped. And so I figured out how to make it bigger and better. And that was 10 years ago, thanks to a total now of 6 grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities and a few others. It's expanded from a local history project to a national history project. And then as more people wanted to use this resource to share science and art, it does that too now. So there's a bunch of art trails, art walking tours. I don't know that there's any in Nebraska yet, but there are quite a few. And one example that I think there's a link to a video of this, but we made this for the Nelson. And since it knows your location, it can guide you with an arrow. And when you get within 20 meters, you can adjust the radius. But when you get within 20 meters of any of the sculptures, it will automatically start to play. And so you can hear the voices of the artists, you can hear the voices of the museum supporters, you can get the backstory. Everything has a history. I think that came up in the reports. Several of you mentioned this, some sort of connection between history and art. And so that's what it's really kind of designed to do. So again, I started the focus on history because that's what I do. One of the very first entries was this statue, which was in our town in Huntington, West Virginia. That's Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history. And even though there's only 3 statues in the whole town, and even though this is on a major street, we oftentimes don't notice the monuments and art that surround us. But once we do, we never fail to stop seeing it and thinking about it. So we made it possible to get the backstory behind this. We heard you hear about the effort to create the statue, a little bit about the artist, and then, of course, links to books and articles and things so people can understand why this person is so important. So, by the way, Cleo was the ancient muse of history. And when people started liking it, and I thought, well, I have to figure out a name for this thing. We said, well, what if Cleo, the ancient muse of history, was around today? What would she do? And she would reach us where we are. And as much as we wish otherwise, we are on our phones and our phones know where we are. So what if librarians ruled the world? What would this technology do? And that's kind of been the guiding question. So everything is a hook. You get to learn as you go. And then once you can easily create a walking tour or trail or driving tour just by combining some of these entries. And there's now over 1,500 of them. I have lost track of the organizations that have gotten grants using Cleo either as the main answer to how are we going to reach people or as one of the answers. And nothing would make me happier than if that happened for your organizations. And Cleo is free, full stop. So if you think about one of those $10,000 grants, Cleo has been built with about $500,000. So when you think about the cost of building and maintaining a platform, it's just not possible. So the goal of Cleo, which is an independent nonprofit, once it started growing, I wanted to make sure the university didn't own it because they wanted to put ads in it. Once it started growing, we created an independent nonprofit, and I write lots of letters of support. You actually don't even need one. It's free and open, designed for people to share the history, art, and science in their communities at no cost. So you can use the existing resources, people, supporters you have, or if you need something, you can make this part of a grant and keep every penny. The only exception would be if there's a feature you need that we don't already provide, we'd have to figure out something to raise that money. But chances are it'll work pretty well as is. You can add audio. It's kind of goosebumpy. So this is an example of a walking tour of the plaza where we had a couple local historians, 3 local historians, and one of the journalists, kind of our celebrity, narrate. And it's history and art as you walk through this lovely. We have nature trails. We have civil rights trails. We have history. We have there's science and engineering trails. And there's all kinds of options for connecting people to that information. We can integrate with QR codes. We can integrate with beacons, which are little Bluetooth sensors. Some of you might have something like that in your house, or geofencing, which is, I can get into the details of this, but basically your phone knows where you are. We can create radiuses in the real world. And when you enter or leave that radius, something can happen. You're already part of that technology, whether you wanted to or not. If you've ever wondered why you get hit with ads when you're near something, it's because your phone knows where you are. And again, I said, well, what if librarians ruled the world? They wouldn't hit us with ads; they'd hit us with information. So you can use geofencing. You can make the radius as small as 10 meters, all the way up to 3 miles. So it could work for a drive down I-80, where you know the person's not going to stop at something to hear about the historical marker or the public art, but as they drive, you could give them information about that. Create kind of a narrated drive, almost like a podcast that knows a podcast for your drive, and you can take it all the way down to 10 and 20 meters, which works really well for like a train station, a large train station. If you wanted to, you can do an indoor space. We're going to do the new terminal, the new airport terminal, because there's 28 works of art. And it also works for sculpture gardens and other kinds of outdoor things. The nice thing about adding the geofencing option is it makes it possible you don't have to do a walking tour anymore. With walking tours, you have to decide to go to a starting place and follow that route. And when we were thinking about doing this for the airport, we thought, there's 28 works of art. There's 2 different terminals. If we tell everybody, you've got to first walk to Terminal A, Gate 1. Probably not going to get a whole lot of people to do this. With geofencing, you don't have to have a starting point. You hit this little button here on the app and put whatever radius you want and other options. You can just walk around the airport. And whenever you get within 10 meters of one of the works of art, you hear a little chime and you hear about the art. So let me give you just a little sample of what this is like. So you can see we're doing a walking tour, and it's telling us this way. It sensed that we were within 20 meters of this hotel and art museum, if you've ever been to a 21C. And you can hear about it. That's the museum art director. So, of course, she does tell you about the museum, but she starts, and I think this is smart, by giving you the history of the place and telling you, I think the hook that's most likely to get people, if you come in, they have the historic Savoy Grill, which has been around for a century, and you can sit at the booth that Harry Truman sat at. Allegedly, I don't know. But there's and then tells you about and you can see the pictures of the hotel. Oh, and we have this art museum, and our art museum is actually unique. And then it's open 24/7, right? So kind of working your way up there. So the way this geofencing works, if you look at this little map over here, you can toggle between a bunch of options. This is a bird's eye map. So this green pin is for, this is UMKC where I teach. So each of these are buildings. The green pin is the one you're listening to right now. The blue or purple is where you are right now. That's your radius that you've selected. And as this pin gets closer to this building, as soon as that radius gets in there, it'll play that audio piece. Or if the other one is still playing, it'll just add to a queue. And you can have up to 18 in your queue if you end up just going way too fast. I want to emphasize now, you don't need to do any of this. It's automatic. So all you need to do is put in an address or a GPS coordinate, or just find wherever that work of art is on a map. We use Google Maps, and you just click on it, and then you write. And you can add pictures, you can add audio. It's as simple as just dropping in an audio file, as simple as selecting. It's basically the same thing you do when you send an email and you want to send an attachment. You click the button, you find the photo, you put it in, and you give it a caption. So these are kind of options of things people have made. This one's a little harder, but it's really cool. You can create an immersive 360-degree virtual tour inside your museum or wherever. So this is actually an art gallery, but the exhibit that day was about science, and we use you can all these blue dots. We have videos of the scientist talking about his life's work. And I share this one because it's personal. Dr. Richard Gentile, I spent a couple of days with him, got to know him really well. He passed away shortly after we made this virtual tour, but we have 4 hours of him walking through his gallery, talking about his life's work. And his family used that. They included a link in the obituary. And if you spend time with that, you get to know the person. But this will work well. That's a science example. There's history and art. It works really well with small places. It also works with large places because you can select what floor you're on. And there's a map. And you can click anywhere on the map and it'll take you immediately to it. And then they got a little technical with this one. So they actually embedded audio. So as you walk through the museum, you can it's a free audio tour. And again, totally free platform. This does require a little bit of tech skill, but everything else does not. And when you say, if you click on the button to create a walking tour, it truly walks you through each of these steps. Great. You want to make a walking tour? What do you want? Walking tour, driving tour, etc. So this is my last slide. This was built for organizations and for instructors at the college level. And so there are over 35,000 articles in Cleo nationwide. There's some outside the United States as well. I didn't make those. I made it to where an organization can go on to Cleo. And again, it's thecleo.com because Cleo.com was taken by a large company that sells legal software. If you go on there and you create an account, you can choose whether to make one for an individual or for your organization. Totally free. If you make it for an organization, just make sure I have a little thing on there. Just, please use an official email address so I don't have to try to track the person down, because I give organizations the power to actually bypass the editing queue and create entries that would have the name of the person who wrote it as well as the organization. And then it can have links back to the organization. So you can even put a banner on top of your tour so everyone knows this was made by your organization, as a way to let people know. And because it has the name of the author and the name of the sponsoring organization, I don't feel the need to get in there and vet all the stuff, because if we can't trust our local historical societies, museums, et cetera, it's actually kind of nice to see that. But we found that we really, people tend to take it very seriously and make very good entries. So when you sign up, you become, whoever it is from your organization, they become the facilitator and the gatekeeper. They choose what gets published under the name of their organization. So you can have volunteers. They can create draft entries that goes into a queue. Normally, if this was active, you could click on each one. Here's the ones your organization has saved as draft. That means they're still working on them. These are the ones that have been submitted for your review. And these are the ones that are active. They've been published. And you can see there's a view counter on them. For the instructors, we have a peer review feature that's not really there. It basically adds where the class can work on projects together. And there's even a citation generator so that you don't have to, it'll walk you through how to make a good source for people that don't always know that. And it'll format it for you. So I tried to eliminate all the pain points on this. But, just lastly, completely free. About 500 organizations have used it. A lot of them have gotten grants with it. The platform's free, full stop. And we're on year 10. So we've been, that's about as long as any digital project has sustained itself. So hopefully history will repeat itself. And I hope that this will be something useful for people in your communities who might want to share stuff about history or art or science, or even better, the connections between all of those. So that's it for me.
That's great. Thank you, David. So I'm curious, and you may not have the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You said that organizations have used this to get grants from your experience. How have they done that? Like, how did they use this resource in that way?
Yeah, so maybe they want to make a walking tour. And there are vendors out there. The least expensive one is $10,000 for 2 years. And I think that's probably a fair price, but it's also a very high price. And for most small organizations, I can't recommend spending $10,000. I mean, spend the $10,000 and drive people around and give them a personal experience and then buy them a cheeseburger afterwards. I mean, if you think about the total cost of that, and I'm someone that really believes in this potential. So I knew this would work, but there had to be a few things. It had to work nationally because people don't want an app that only works in one place. You can imagine if there was Yelp or it only worked in one town, it wouldn't be useful. There's a reason Cleo is set up as it's called a travel app in the app stores, because that's when people are usually most interested and most open. So if you wanted to create anything from a virtual museum tour to a sculpture garden tour to a walking tour that combines history and art, this answers the question of how. And the only thing left is research and writing, which is a lot. And so that's where the grant money can go. And here's my strong sell. Obviously Cleo's free. That's my hard sell is this. If you get a grant using Cleo, please consider using some of that money for a recent graduate or someone who is in school. Give them a little bit of money. The amount matters, but it's the resume. It's the connections. My students get jobs from this project, and that's been true other places too. So that's my hard sell. But obviously I can't control that. So the platform is free and open, and you can. I mean, a lot of organizations just use it, because grants are hard to write, and like we can knock this out in a week. Between our team, we already know this information, and we'll make it better over time. We'll add audio later, but that option is still there to get a state or national grant. And I love the way this shows the disciplines are connected in a really easy, fun way.
And I am assuming that a community, an area can use it in two different ways. So for instance, I'm going to use Brownville. If the community wanted to do a walking tour throughout town, you could do that. And then also if one of the museums wanted to use it in their own building, yep, you can do that.
Yeah, here's a couple examples. All right, it says my screen share is loading. Okay. Hopefully you can see it now. Fountains of Kansas City driving tour. So Kansas City, City of Fountains, these are the ones in Kansas City proper. And that's a lot of driving. So we made it to where you can actually break down the tour into different parts. There's the downtown, here's another section, here's this, right? So there's an example of a citywide driving trail. And you can imagine how. Can you still hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I got this notification popped up on me. Here is an example of the virtual tour inside a museum. You can look around, and everywhere you click, there's videos embedded in there. And I mean, this is just kind of fun. You can go take me to the basement and then take me to this room. So if you've ever used a lot of other platforms, you do this, you kind of scroll through and then you're lost. You don't remember where you are. But you can go, okay, take me to the third floor, and then you're there. And then you can also use it to embed audio. So here's all the ones downstairs, main floor, second floor, third floor. Because your phone doesn't know what floor you're on. So you do need to tell it that. Other than that, it can sense everything else. Another option, I mean, this is perfect for parks. This is one of the most popular parks in our town to walk around. And there's history, art, and science along the walk. So we made a walking tour. And you can use geofencing and just put your phone in your purse or pocket. And as you get near all this stuff, you'll hear the audio. Or you can take the walking tour and follow the arrow. You don't really need to, because it's a loop. You couldn't get lost if you tried. But yeah, that's the idea. And you can get the history of, public art pieces and information about all of those. So, yeah.
Great.
And Rachel's correct that she's been to Brownville, so she knows what we look like. And our historical society, we have 9 different properties in a town of 140. And I took all kinds of notes on this, because that's one of the things people coming down the highway or driving through town, if we can tell them a little bit about each of the buildings, that kind of thing, as they drive through town, we feel like we can get them to stop, and then spend some time with us. And so I took all kinds of notes on this. So that's I'll present it to our board, and I think there's several projects that just pop right into my head, as you were talking about this. That's next year we're celebrating Robert Furness's, or in 2024, celebrating Robert Furness's 200th birthday, on a walking trail based around his life here in Brownville and the different things that he did for the state of Nebraska, all kinds of things like that this could be used for. So, yeah, it's a wonderful presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope it's helpful. And one thing I didn't mention, because I don't want to get too in the weeds on the tech side and make people scared of it, but you can add contributing entries that only live within a tour. And so not everything is a landmark. And so it's kind of nice to be able to add those. And they only live within the tour, which means you're not cluttering up the map in your town, because you don't want, if you're in Emporia, Kansas, my hometown, and there's hundreds of pins, there might as well be 0. That's just, it's going to overwhelm people. But you can create walking tours where the pins only live within the tour. As an example, there was an Eagle Scout project, and they interpreted, it was 80 trees planted in honor of World War I, men who died in World War I. And so you could walk by them and you would hear about each one of their lives. A little bit, because most of them were like 17 years old, so there wasn't much, but and you can see their picture. Well, you don't want 81 pins all next to each other. And if you've got 81 pins, people don't understand it's part of so there was one pin, but when you clicked on it, you could then do the walking tour, and that works pretty well for some of the parks and other things. So that's just another option.
that kind of answers one of my questions too, because we can do a history tour throughout the town, but we also have an art and nature tour, natural history tour, all of those kinds of things, but they would all kind of sit within the same geographic area. And if you can separate them, so people could pick which one they wanted to do, then that would make it ideal for us.
Yeah, and that contributing entry feature works really well for that. We ran into it when we noticed that people were creating pins for the same building. Your county courthouse. Maybe you have a labor history tour and there's a labor demonstration there. There's a women's history tour and there's a suffrage demonstration. There's a civil rights tour and it just kind of gets, so we made it to where you could have those all live within those tours. And that way there's not 6 pins for the exact same building and people start, which one is it? So that's kind of one of those things. It's a good problem to have when you have too much information there, but it's a way to organize it in a way that's intuitive for folks.
I like your other idea here too about using the grants for students. We coordinate with Peru State College, their history department, quite a bit, and this would be ideal to bring in interns from the history department students and put them to work doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I love my students. They need help and they need projects like this that are a safe place for them to make mistakes versus their first job. But then they also, they do amazing things and they'll surprise you. And I've lost track of the students that have edited their Clio entries long after the class was over. I've had students go on and get historical markers dedicated, which means they raised money and they worked with community organizations and they did this after graduation. So it's one of those things where it's a little bit of work to plant that seed, but we've got to. And when we look at our organization, I'm a life member of a history organization here in Kansas City. I'm about 30 years younger than everybody else. And they're always like, well, how do we get young people? And, I tell them, well, you ask, you ask and you involve them. And so this can be a natural way to do that. And, they're really thrilled with a $500 or $1,000 stipend, and they'll put all of themselves into it.
Great. Are there any other questions for David? If you think of something as we go along, or if maybe, you're having internet troubles, which does not always happen with Zoom, feel free to drop things into the chat and we can always come back and revisit them. So feel free to do that. If you wake up tomorrow morning and go, oh man, wish I had asked this question. Feel free to send an email, that type of thing, and I can put you in touch. We can certainly do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. This is a great resource and can be used a lot of different ways. It's very flexible, which I thought would be incredibly helpful. So we are going to hand it over to Cheryl.
Okay, great. I really enjoyed your presentation, David, to be honest. It was a lot of fun seeing technology do these wonderful things. It was great. I am with the University of Nebraska Extension. I am located at Scottsbluff at the Research Extension Center, and I'm a specialist. And so I really focus in on community development sorts of issues. And so I'm a part of what's called Rural Prosperity Nebraska. And so I just like to, I guess, start off asking how many of you may have in your past life or currently worked with extension in any way. Is this a familiar thing to you? Not familiar? A lot of times it's the first thing that comes to mind is county fair and 4-H and youth programs. In Nebraska, we also have something that's really popular, and that's Backyard Farmer on ETV. And so that is an extension product. And so colleagues of mine are involved with Backyard Farmer. So in the community development or rural prosperity in Nebraska area, we have a lot of people working across the state, as well as a good selection of folks and expertise on the Lincoln campus as well. So actually what I'm going to do is actually talk about resources in sort of a bigger profile that you might need to just kind of like refresh and think about as projects or implementation or ideas come to mind. These could be resources that you might want to lean on or pull in for discussions or planning or implementation. So I've got about 4 different things that Rachel is actually gonna do a screen share with to just give you a little idea of who we are and what some of those topics are on the community development side that we're involved in. So Rachel, if you want to start with that brochure, and if you want to go to the next page, scroll down right. Yeah. So in rural prosperity Nebraska, we try to sort of organize our expertise in about 6 different areas. So you'll see one that's community economic development, and that's kind of your business support in a lot of different ways. Some of it can be entrepreneurship sorts of things. We have a person that works pretty focused on Latino small business programs and support, value-added ag, and then a cooperative development center. So, and a lot of business related things. So if you bump into projects or efforts that might benefit by a discussion or some tools or resources in that realm, we may have people that could kind of help that discussion. The one at the top, community engagement, we do have faculty across the state, and we do get pulled in quite often working with community groups. So actually, I'm involved with 2 other colleagues in the western part of the state. The Scottsbluff area is actually working on a creative district application. Don't have it quite in. They've gotten it kind of looked at least once. And we, some faculty out here, were actually asked to kind of help facilitate some of those public meetings to draw in input and kind of help with some vision mission work statements. So we were facilitating meetings to kind of help the process. And these are the ones that I know about. I also know we've got a colleague who's working with the community of Columbus and doing some work there as well. So that could be another resource for you as you move down this path. Maybe you need to brainstorm a little bit or bring some other people in or different groups. That might be a person that you could call in to kind of help and think through that, as well as help you co-lead a meeting, for instance. The regional food systems, I perked up quite a lot because it's over the noon hour for me out here. And when I heard about this Brownville package with a meal, it sounded, that sounded like a really fun opportunity. We do have people that interact with a lot of the small businesses that are doing entrepreneurial kinds of efforts on food. So food promotion, there's a farm to school effort, some specialty crops sort of things. So they also have some expertise. Placemaking, that's a very broad umbrella that again includes a lot of planning and implementation. How do you take the plans and then put them into action? They work quite often with built environments, streetscapes, a variety of different things. The parks you were talking about, this could be easily under that umbrella as well. Arts and culture, design for public health. So a variety of different things. And then finally, we've got people attraction. And actually that's the group that I kind of hone in on and work through, and where we really look at new resident recruitment and retention. And to be honest, this whole arts creative district effort is a great plus and a great pull factor for bringing people not only in to visit your community, but in there to stay in your community. So so we have a number of different programs or processes that we can work with at your community level. And then there's also some leadership opportunities, and that can be for a small group or a larger group. And it might be leadership in terms of you individually. It might be also at the community level of what could be some of those things you need to think about or dive into a little bit more to understand how your community functions. So these 6 areas really are focus areas that we like to kind of dive into and have some expertise in. I will also say that being connected with to the University of Nebraska, we also have colleagues in a variety of subject matter areas that we can bring in and help on issues. So even if this doesn't touch one of the projects that you're thinking about, I would say that we probably have someone within our system that could offer some expertise in a variety of different ways. So this is one kind of picture. Now let's see who some of these people are across the state. So Rachel, if you want to pull up the next one, perfect. So when I said we have people across the state, I really meant it. So I'm located in Scotts Bluff. What we have in the lower corner there are really people who have some statewide expertise. And in a variety of different areas. We have somebody, Sandra's there with a Latino. We've got Ted Hibbler, who works primarily with Native American audiences. We have some entrepreneurship pieces. I work in the people attraction area. And then as you can see, we really have a variety of people located in across the state. And those colored areas really are what they call their accountability regions. So they try to stay connected as best they can to those communities that are there and counties and the efforts that are happening. So pretty much we've got a couple of holes, some people retired that we need to fill. One is in that southeast corner. So we don't have anybody there, but we do have a number of people located on the Lincoln campus. So there we kind of lean on them a lot to kind of pitch it on the eastern side. And then we also have an opportunity in the North Platte area where we're looking for somebody. So I was keen to listen to the those things that are going on at the canteen. We're actually in the process of hiring somebody, but we have somebody south of the canteen at Brandy who may be a resource to you. And then Jamie to the west, who might have some good ideas as well, and a connection if you get stuck or need some expertise in a certain way or some facilitation. So the next one, Rachel, if you would want to pull that one up. We do a lot of work with communities on the planning process and facilitation process, but we also have certain programs or efforts that, because people have asked for them over time, we've kind of incorporated it into a concise program that you can talk to us about and we can help implement. So if you want to go to the next page of this, we have something that's called First Impressions, and this would kind of go along with some of the arts district opportunities that you might have. And we've divided it into 3 sort of levels. What we were finding is that a lot of communities, for their online presence, they may think they have a good online presence, but there are some gaps and holes in things, especially as people want to visit and or relocate. And so what we've done with our team is actually kind of developed a worksheet where we have a couple of our faculty actually do some online work and see kind of what's out there, what's available. Something as simple as, does your grocery store have their hours posted, or a pharmacy posted with hours? That can be a real need, especially if you're traveling or if you want to relocate. I mean, sometimes our online presence doesn't accurately reflect what we have. in our community. So that's really the discussion. It's like, let's get both of these in sync. Quite often, there's more in the community than what it shows online. The peer-to-peer first impressions is basically two communities looking to visit each other and then swap their expertise. What did they see? What did they like? What was available to them? What surprised them? It's really about the fresh eyes looking at a situation and at a community. And you can, once you live, as you're living in a community, there's a tendency to actually not see things, right? You become so used to seeing it all the time that it doesn't occur to you anymore. I mean, it just doesn't kind of shout out. Having some fresh eyes look at it might say, oh, we need to improve this, or hey, that's a great idea. Maybe from viewing the next from the other community, can we incorporate it? And then they go through a checklist, and then a kind of report is compiled, and then they exchange that report with each other so that they really get a fresh eyes, a perspective of their community and that fresh first impression. The professional one really is at a professional level. We have a great opportunity with a colleague on campus who's in the hospitality department, who actually can bring students quite often into a community and actually do a variety of things, whether it's do some mystery shoppers to give you an idea of how your community looks to different people, maybe different age groups, maybe looking for different things, as well as spend a real concerted time with planning and strategic planning, and really work on at a fairly in-depth level. And so the first impressions really cover a variety of different things: the online, the peer-to-peer, and then also the professional. So I share that with you as just one example of kind of what might be available. And in terms of time requirements and cost and a variety of things, we go from everywhere to the online has no fee associated with it, to the professional has a pretty substantial fee. And most of the time that fee, what you find is it goes to materials and or transportation. And especially when you bring students to a community, that adds up really quick. So that gives you a little flavor for that program. Another one that we'd want to show you, just as an example, would be this one called Red Carpet Service. And you might want to, there we go. So this is one that I've been familiar with, and that there was a lot of requests from communities to, can you help us with really kind of training or upping the skill level of the people on the front line in our communities. And so this is an effort to really bring frontline professionals together. And we talk about, in particular, tourism and how tourism brings in a lot of dollars in the community. And there are things you can do when you're working and interacting with customers to really give that best showcase of service. And it reflects not only on the business, but also on your community, and so they leave with an impression that this is a really cool place, and not only the business, but also the community. And so this just to kind of explains the program a little bit, what's covered. If you want to scroll down a bit on the back page, I believe, it shows how it works. It's like a 2.5-hour program. Usually there's kind of a recommended group size, but that can fluctuate a little bit. And then what the fee is there. And for this one, to be honest, we charge a fee, and then we keep travel separate. And then what we do to kind of encourage communities to repeat this is actually, if you do it within a year, there is no fee. It's just the cost of travel to bring the presenter back. So that's just a way to sort of up a community's game in terms of knowing some elements of skill in terms of how do you do good customer service, what the resources are at the tourism level, We also end the session with it's a real fun activity called a brain drain on what are all those hidden assets, hidden gems within the community. And we break up into teams, and the team that gets the most items identified in the shortest amount of time wins. And it's always amazing how people, to be honest, they forget that there is so much available in your community. And again, that helps when you've got frontline people to give better referrals and to keep people in the community a bit longer, as well as to just have a great time. And that's key. So these two programs that I've shared with you are just examples of things the different groups within Extension and Rural Prosperity Nebraska would have to offer. And again, we ground this quite often with a lot of interaction and planning, and helping groups think about what they want to do, how they want to do it, and then how do you take that plan and move it toward action. And that's the real key piece, right? So that's really all I had. I just wanted to share some resources, some opportunities, some people, and then ask if you have any questions. Or I was hearing a lot of projects that I thought could easily have connections to some of the resources with the university down the road. So any questions that you might have?
Cheryl, I have to admit, I love the idea with the red carpet program, how if you do it twice in a year, it's one fee, but plus the travel, because I am assuming there's probably a lot of turnover on frontline staff. So you may feel frustrated if you're like, well, I've done this once, but now we have completely new people. Am I just, sinking a lot of money into this? So I really like that there's that option of doing it twice in a year.
And right. And that's exactly the reason why, is that we actually want to make it a habit that a community would offer this and have it available. And so you actually create some kind of customer service buzz within your businesses and within the community. And because, a one-shot training is not going to accomplish very much. But if you were to do this over time, it really can be beneficial. So this has actually been offered for a number of years, and across Nebraska, it's really fun to see the kinds of businesses that pick up on it. In Valentine, we had some canoe and canoeing on the Niobrara businesses send their entire staff, and these are all young people, for the most part, and they would have great stories about how they worked with those visitors from other places, and some of the challenges they had and how to kind of work through some of those. At the same token, in that session, we had some people on Main Street that had been in frontline positions forever. They're adding their concerns and some of their challenges. And so it was a great mix of the experienced and the unexperienced, sort of sharing their war stories and how do you handle it, because it's all you learn by doing on the customer service side.
Well, and I don't know about anybody else, but whenever I travel, I always ask, where are the places to go? Because it's always the people who live there who know the best, coffee shops or know where to go eat for supper that, you don't know if you're just passing through. So it's great that training can be provided.
Yeah. And to be honest, asking people, there's a lot on our phone. Absolutely. But there's some benefit also to just asking, where would you go? Or, what do you think about this place? And actually in a lot of the smaller towns, especially some of the natural resource amenities that we might have, you might have a difficulty getting there without some good local directions. Roads get closed, things change. And so having that expertise right there really adds value, and it just makes people feel so good that they're cared about.
Absolutely. Sarah, there's the brewery that's out by North Platte, but it's like out in the country. I don't remember the name of it, but the first time I went, I thought, oh, I have gotten myself lost.
Yeah, that's pals. Yep. And they
Yes,
are, yeah,
yes,
they are not, they're not by anything but themselves. Yeah.
right. And I thought,
Yep.
oh, I've made a bad decision.
You know, I'm just thinking too of some of these, some of the assets, that we have, might take a little, you know, personal touch to get people from point A to point B. And so, and they can be in any shape and form, natural resources or art related, or even theater, you know, all sorts of different things. So this customer service opportunity really allows a community to sort of work on that. I mean, improve that first service point for those that are visiting in the community, as well as it helps for those that are living in the community as well. Service is a good thing, period, right? Absolutely.